Hello, and welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel once a week. It chooses the horror film and they discuss it. Today we're talking about 2024's Terrifier 3, which was directed by Damien Leone. I'm your co host, Alec, and joining me today as my co host instead of Eric is the one and only Andy Danish. Welcome back, Andy.
Alec, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. No, really appreciate you coming on for this one. Not gonna lie, not a lot of people. I've asked other people, like, maybe 6 months ago when this movie was coming out, I was like, "Are you gonna see Terrifier?" And a lot of my friends said no. And you did, though. You saw it. Did you see it in theaters?
I saw the third one in theaters.
You did, right?
I did not see the first two in theaters.
No, no, but the third one, yeah, because not a lot of people saw it because they were too afraid. And I was like, man, I don't even know if we should do this on a podcast because I don't know who I'm gonna get to do it. Eric didn't really want to. That's why he's not here. And a few of my other friends out here were too afraid to see it. So you saw this in theaters, though.
Yeah, and let me just say it is definitely a very intense experience in theaters, but it can be a fun movie to watch if you don't take it too seriously. It is a little cartoonish at certain moments because the fact that it's so gory in such an over the top manner. It could be like you're watching a John Waters movie almost with like the way he kind of blends the clown with the gore. Like I felt there were moments where I felt like I was watching Stepmom, for example, where the violence, the slacking, the hashing was just so thrown away so casually. Like the way he was like Art the Clown would be dancing and like have his face like open really wide while like cutting somebody with a chainsaw
Yeah.
was so cartoonish at moments. Like it's definitely gore porn, but it's also very, very satirical and over the top. So I can't say I was too terrified, quote unquote, of it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, I'm impressed you saw it in theaters because I am honestly, this is crazy, but this is one of the few movies that I'm like, I need to have like a safety net where if I want to stop watching, I can just like, press pause. Because being in a theater and not knowing what's gonna happen and how intense it's gonna get after the second one, I was just like, I don't know what to expect with the series anymore. And it, I don't know what it is. Like, I don't like Saw. I'm not a Saw guy, not a Hostel guy. But those movies, I'm at least like, okay, John Kramer's like, I'm doing this because you're a bad person too, and I'm giving you a chance to escape. And it's like, okay, there's that angle. This is like the gore of Saw, but this like sadistic enjoyment of it while it's happening, and there's like no reason for it that I'm like, my brain like can't accept it. I don't know, dude. It's so fucked up to me. These movies are so fucked up.
They are, and I agree. There's definitely a very sadistic element to it. And I think Damien Leone tried to make it tolerable where, like you said, in the Saw movies, the way they tried to make it work was having each of these characters have a way to get out of it. I think Damien Leone's way was to have art just be so cartoonish and so much like a cartoon character that could jump off the page and not necessarily be somebody who necessarily existed in reality. Like his way of making it work was making it him somebody who was almost funny. The way he like opened his eyes, the way he opened his mouth, the way he would like interact with some of the people beforehand.
Right.
Like there were moments where people are like crying because they don't want to be slashed by Art the Clown, and then Art is just sort of like making the same facial expressions almost like a pantomime, and he's sort of doing the like boo-hoo facial expressions
Yeah.
almost like making fun of them. And so it's in those moments where he's kind of taking a step back and making like a little cartoon moment out of it. And for me, I felt like there was a morbid curiosity to that. The fact that you had
Mm.
this character who was so sadistic that he was going through doing killing all these people and just doing it just without batting an eye, but making wild, crazy facial expressions.
That's a good way to say it. Morbid curiosity for these films.
Yes, yes, and that's what it was for me. It was just very morbid curiosity. It was
Yeah.
I want to see what he does next, or I want to see where this goes next,
Right.
because there's like a mythology built around Art the Clown of like being this. otherworldly clown coming from like that, who's like a demon or connected to demons. I'm still trying to figure out what his exact backstory is.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, and then seeing the girl who tags along with him, who was one of the girls who originally was in the first Terrifier.
Yeah.
And she was one of the girls he originally kind of ate and disfigured, and they then locked her away. And she kind of all of a sudden was brainwashed into wanting to go along with Art. So I think the third movie kind of did a pretty good job of heightening the story to a certain extent, because it could have been more of like Art just going around killing people, slashing at people, except wearing a Santa suit. But now you have Victoria Hayes, I think is the name of the character. You have her with her disfigured face and going around with like a demonic voice and doing some very messed up things with a cut piece of glass that I'm not going to mention on this podcast.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we will. We will.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, my thoughts, like you said, morbid curiosity. And it's just like, wow, that was pretty atrocious, but I want to see what happens next.
Yeah, no, like that's the thing. Like I saw the first one on Netflix in like 2016. I was like, damn, that was pretty intense for a slasher, but I was still like, okay, I'm on board. Second one came out and I saw it, and that bedroom scene like genuinely changed me. Like I was like, I can't handle movies like this anymore. But then the third one was coming out and the trailer came out and it's like this little girl on Christmas and Art's there and I was like, "Oh my God, like what are we doing?" And it came out in theaters and people were like, it's good. It's a good movie, but I was too afraid to see it. And then I watched it with Jack. He like illegally got it somehow. And we watched it and I was like, damn, that movie was pretty intense, but I still don't think it topped the bedroom scene from the second one. I think this movie had a lot of moments, especially the last like 10 minutes. I was just like so uncomfortable with the things that were being said and the way people were being killed, but I still don't think it topped, the bedroom scene from the second one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that to me was like, I don't know. I'm never gonna be the same because of that scene. But yeah, this one very gory. I'm glad I didn't see it in theaters. I don't know if I could see the fourth one because again, I'm like, I don't know if I can handle all this shit. I want to pause it. I want to be able to look away. You could do that in theaters, but whatever. But yeah, I do like Art the Clown in theory. I think he's a scary character. We're learning a little bit about his backstory in each movie. There's a broader world here. Like I like it, but I don't know, man. The sadism of it just feels so gross to me. But again, I can appreciate them for what they are. They're just not really for me, you know?
I get that. And I think, like you said, it depends on taste, and it depends on what you can handle and your threshold. And you know, you were saying that you don't think you could handle four. For me, I was like, that's where they're leaving the story at. They're leaving the story with Sierra kind of just standing with blood covered over her, but Art having escaped and her cousin kind of just falling in the crevice of the earth. And she's just
Yeah.
standing there by herself. There's no like complete conclusion, because we see her hands heal, but we also see Art escapes and kind of comes back to while sitting on the bus. And so for me, I'm just like, what the hell? Why? Like, did Gabby? She doesn't rescue Gabby? You know, Art gets away. What happens next? Like, how does Sierra get Gabby back? Like, just leaving Gabby in the hole with her just standing there with blood all over her. And she has this sword and has these magical abilities, and she all does nothing but stand there with like a hand up her ass. I just was like, what happens next? And then learning that four doesn't come out till like 2026,
Mm.
part of me was like biting my lip a little, saying, I don't think I can wait that long. I actually want to see how this story ends, because there are so many like hooks left dangling. Like, there was the cafe scenes in Terrifier 2 where she has those dreams where they're on the TV set and there's a bunch of different food trucks around and Art's there,
Yeah.
you know, but they don't explain that per se.
Hmm.
So I imagine, oh, they'll probably maybe explain it in three, and they didn't explain it in three. So I'm just like, okay, so Sierra's gonna go into hell because there's demons involved, and we'll learn about what those cafe food trucks are about. And
Yeah.
somehow we'll find out like how Art got possessed by these demons. We'll finally learn how this kind of goes back full circle. So for me, I was like, can't 4 come out this year?
No, like to be clear, I'm going to see four, just not in theaters. Like, of course, I'm curious what's going to happen next. Like, yeah, this huge cliffhanger, and definitely they're going to go to hell in the next one. She's going to go rescue her sister or her cousin. I'm sure that's where the clown cafe is as well. And the other thing I think is, I don't think that's Jonathan, or maybe it is, and she's going to be able to save him in hell and her family. Maybe she's able to save her whole family in hell. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, the fourth one definitely has to get a little bit more into the lore. And one other thing, really quick, just something you mentioned earlier about what is Art and his backstory a little bit. I've heard, and I think Damien Leone confirmed this. In the first Terrifier movie, that's just a serial killer named Art the Clown, and he is a legit serial killer. And then when he dies at the end of the first one, that's when this demon comes into play, and it's the little girl who's using Art from the second one, the little girl from the second one, is using Art as like a protector or whatever. So he's now a possessed serial killer, and that's what we've been dealing with since the second one. So the second and third Art is a possessed version of it by a demon, and he has these protectors like this the little girl or Vicky from this one. And there's one line at the end that the Vicky girl or the Vicky demon says, they chose you because you're so strong or something like that. So it makes it seem like there's another, like angels or something like that are playing this like game of chess with Art and the demon and all that stuff. That's kind of what I was getting a little bit.
I mean, that makes total sense. And because there were all these little pieces, I think story wise, there wasn't enough backstory that was inserted in a streamlined manner that was cohesive enough for me to kind of like get what point A to point B was. Because there was so much gore and there was so much like gory set pieces happening that I got so distracted by that. I almost remembered, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's a story.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
But what I love about second that they also continued in the third was the soundtrack. Oh, the Midnight soundtrack. Loved that they used the Midnight because the Midnight is one of my favorite bands.
Oh.
And using the Midnight as Sierra's soundtrack. Look at the beginning when they do the opening credits in Terrifier 2, she's like
Oh
building her
yeah.
cosplay.
I love that song, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's called like You Are Not Alone, right? Is that it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's sick. You like that band?
I love the Midnight.
Okay, nice. So they did this music too.
Yeah, they didn't write the song for this movie, but I think they just it's on the soundtrack, I think though. But
Mm.
and there's also I noticed at certain points in their rooms that there are like posters with the Midnight albums or from like 80s synthwave albums. So I really liked how they set the tone with the Midnight posters.
Mm.
So the soundtrack is another reason why I liked the movies so much.
Yeah, dude, the soundtrack's incredible. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no.
But yeah, the soundtrack's incredible. For what they did do, $2 million to make this movie is crazy. You know, music aside, but just like the effects of it, and it's a 2 hour long film. I'm pretty impressed by that.
Oh, for sure. And it just goes to show what you can do with like mid-budget project and not having to spend like 100 million or billions of dollars to like get an audience. Pay attention, studios.
Dude, this was made for 2 million. It made $90 million and it's not rated. That's crazy.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, so clearly, studios need to look at this when they're, making horror films for like $100 million. It's like, what? You can do this? I know the director Damien Leone is a special effects guy, so that helps a lot to have the director and writer who is also, can do these intense special effects. It's a lot like John Wick. The director of John Wick was the fight coordinator and stunt person for the Matrix movies.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, which is it's a cool angle to have as a director. So that's the thing. I got to give credit where credit is due. Like just because it's not for me, there's so much good here still. But you said something else earlier too, like the facial expressions that this guy David, what's his name? David Howard Thornton, the guy that plays Art, when he's killing people, that's when it bothers me. But in scenes like when he goes into the bar with Clint Howard and stuff like that, those facial expressions when he's fucking with them, very funny. I liked that stuff. But it's when he's like cutting off arms and like laughing about it, like to somebody, and like that's when it bothers me. But otherwise, yes, can be funny. And it's weird to have a funny, quiet character. So it's so difficult to pull that off, and they really do. This guy's extremely talented.
Oh, for sure. And you can tell there were those moments or those scenes where at first you see he has that wide, angry, like grin. And at first you think all of a sudden that means he's going to like kill somebody or like attack somebody. But then he'll have moments where he'll just like act clownish. He'll act like a mime and just like make a pouty face or like shrug his shoulders or just act like he's a clown for hire. He doesn't automatically like try to attack or like maim somebody. And so for me, those moments, I was sort of on edge thinking, when's it going to happen? When's he going to, murder this guy? When's he going to kill this guy? And
Right.
he does that a lot in the bar scene because when he sees Santa Claus and he does the whole thing where he acts like he's a big fan of Santa Claus after Santa Claus, I forget. Oh, the actor who plays Santa Claus, he's in a bunch of Rob Zombie movies. I forget his name though.
Dude, that guy's in everything. I just saw Final Destination. He's the Agent Shrek. He's that. This guy's in everything.
Yeah. He also played Grandpa in the Rob Zombie Monsters movie.
Yeah, dude, he's in Rob Zombie's Halloween. He's in The Fugitive. Like this guy's in a lot of movies. He's a character actor. He's very good.
Yeah. And at first I didn't recognize him because he was like dressed as Santa Claus. But yeah, once they took everything off, Art cuts his beard off and everything, I'm like, oh, it's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But at first, I wasn't sure if like Art was actually going to do anything to Santa because he actually just felt like he was like, excited to see him and excited to meet Santa Claus because he was looking for a Santa Claus costume, I think, all along. But he found one, and the Santa was himself was used to kind of getting adoration because he has the two girls sitting on his lap, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's the Santa outfit. This is comes with the territory." And Clint Howard and the bartender are all like, trying to get the girl's attention too. And so then Art comes in and like acts like a huge fan. And in that moment, I wasn't sure actually gonna kill him. He probably is, but I also almost thought he probably wants the hat and the suit and all that. But he's kind of taken a really long time to not only build up his adoration towards him and kind of mess with annoy the other two patrons. I was like, is he actually going to get to murder either of them? And then I'm like, well, yeah, he has a big plastic bag that looks like it has a bunch of rusty stuff in it. So of course he's going to do something to them.
Yeah.
Like he has that custom fire hydrant he made where it can literally freeze dry people. Like it's like he tried testing it on rats and was able to smash the rats and like break them in half. And
Yeah.
then he uses it on Santa. And that scene kind of like, got under my skin a little bit because you figured, oh, okay, in reality, you can't actually freeze dry somebody and like break them. But I'm also like, he actually, he made like a custom made one that freeze dried him. And he did it on Santa Claus where Santa wasn't like completely frozen. He was actually partially still talking and his eyes were batting and he was
Ugh.
still like kind of semi conscious while his legs were being smashed and his arms were being cut off, froze dried. And then for me, I cringed a lot at that moment.
Dude, it's brutal. And like that's the thing, like each of the kills are pretty intense in this movie. Like that one's obviously drawn out. Like, everybody survives so much longer than a real human possibly could. But yeah, that was intense. But the thing is, what led up to that, we just talked about, Art's having this fun, and everything, and then he eventually turns and kills everybody. The Santa one was intense. I hated that he pulls out a pistol and just shoots the other two.
Yeah.
Dude, I know he's used guns in the other ones, but I hate that he uses guns. I really do. Because the thing is, nobody challenges Art aside from Sienna. Like everybody else just basically dies immediately. Like nobody ever gets like a good stab in or a couple good punches in. It's like he just fucking decks whoever he interacts with. So I would have appreciated if maybe there was a struggle in the bar and then Art killed him, but yeah, whatever. He pulls out a gun, shoots the other two, and then does crazy shit to Santa. But yeah, really quick, back to the beginning though. That opening scene is pretty intense. I mean, it just lets you know, hey, we're killing kids in this movie, so just like buckle up. This is the first like 5 minutes of the movie. Like two kids, or one kid definitely dies. The other one we assume dies. Parents get murdered. He's dressed as Santa. It's fucked up. But the thing is, it cuts to the scene where Vicky and Art they go back to this house and they sit there for 5 years in like hibernation. I mean, what did you think of that?
I didn't quite understand that. I was
Yeah.
like, what I thought, are they literally just sitting there in hibernation and waiting for somebody to kill? Is it like, oh, they need to kill somebody in order to be revitalized? I was trying to understand that and I didn't quite get it. And I guess that'll be explained in part 4.
Yeah.
But I guess it was similar to when the cop finds Art's body decapitated. It's the fact that he's able to come back because there's somebody there for him to kill. That was my interpretation. It's if he has somebody that he can take bloodshed out on, that kind of revitalizes him and makes him function. So I think it's just he needs somebody to kill.
Well, he kills the cop and then he uses the cop's head and then he meets up with Vicky and then Vicky slits her wrist in a bathtub and then Art sits in a chair in the attic and then it's like 5 years later and these renovators or I think they're there to like evaluate the building because they're gonna knock it down and they go and find Vicky and Art and then Vicky and Art each kill them and then it's like okay now they're back and they're ready to fight. And the thing is, it kind of reminded me, I'm sure you remember this. Remember Halloween 5, the way that it starts?
Yes.
It's like Michael is running away from the town at the end of Halloween 4. He falls in a river, and then like a hermit finds him, and then like for a year, he's just like sleeping in a bed, and then just comes back and he's like, all right, he kills everybody or whatever. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit. Like, okay, I guess, Art's head got cut off, so maybe they need like 5 years to like regenerate this bullshit, but it just kind of felt like too long, like 5 years. I don't know. And then Sienna, the whole thing with her is after the second movie, she's in a I guess like a mental asylum because they blamed her for what happened at the end of the second movie, even though it was Art. So it just felt like a long period of time, from the second to the third one.
Yeah, that was another kind of storyline gap that kind of threw me a little bit because it made me feel all of a sudden like, okay, what happens between like point A and point B, like you were saying, like, the end of 2 and like where that goes from 3, where they kind of pick up from the beginning of the current timeline for Terrifier 3. So that's where I think I got a little lost story wise.
Yeah, because Jonathan goes to college and he like just that's the brother who survives from the second one and he tries to get on with his life, but he's still invested in this because he's sending Sienna notes about like you're the one that has to kill him and he feels like he's still invested in this. So they do fill in a little bit of plot, but not enough to make me feel like why wouldn't Art come back and try and kill her? I don't know. They just don't explain that.
Yeah, yeah.
But whatever. It's fine.
I mean, I still enjoyed it. It was still I still was very engaged the whole time.
Totally. I'm just being nitpicky, but no, it's whatever. Then the scene that we were just talking about where these two guys come to look at the building or whatever, that scene was pretty intense, dude. Like I really wish I was the guy that found Vicky. He just gets stabbed in the neck with a piece of glass and he's out. Like I wish I was that guy. 'Cause fuck, the other guy, dude.
Oh yeah. Oh, having the skin pulled down around his head.
Dude.
Oh, that was actually my favorite kill in the movie, I think.
I was gonna ask you that. Okay, so yeah, I think I don't have like a favorite. I'm trying to think like the one that I want that was the most disgusting and horrible, I think. I'm gonna go with the mom at the end with the rats.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that was pretty awful.
Yeah, like but I mean they're all horrible. But yeah, so I guess that's my quote unquote favorite, I guess. But so this one was yours, the guy that gets his literal face peeled off of his head.
Yeah, I think it was the best executed one. Like
Yeah.
I feel like they built it up and I think it was the best executed kill.
It was scary.
It was. Although the rat one with the mom definitely is a close second.
We'll get to that because that's at the end, but that's fucked up. But yeah, this kill specifically that where he peels the guy's head off was scary because like he sees Art's body and it's not moving and he's like, "Are you real? Like what is this?" And then Art's eyes like come to life and then it's just like off to the races. And then the most, I mean, one of the most fucked up things I've ever seen in a movie. Yeah, Vicky comes out and she just killed the other guy and she's watching Art peeling this guy's head off and she is masturbating with a piece of glass. And it's just like, why?
I was gonna say, did you want to be the one who said it, or should
I
I
mean,
be the one to say it?
listen, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't seen this movie, you're probably like, I can't watch this. Yeah, no, it's so that's so disgusting and disturbing to me, but yeah, so then they kill those guys and they're like, sweet, we're back. Let's go find Sienna and finish the job from 5 years ago that, we needed to wait 5 years to do it, but we're doing it now. It's Christmas time. Sienna's out of the mental asylum. Jonathan's still at school, and Sienna's going to stay with her aunt and uncle and her cousin Gabby. And, it was filmed in Staten Island, so it's kind of a northeastern, wintertime kind of movie, I guess. And Jonathan is at school. He's trying to move on with his life, and he's got this douchebag roommate who's dating this girl who's like a horror kind of not she's a true crime podcaster. Okay, we're a horror movie review podcast. She's a true crime podcast host, and she's infatuated by Art the Clown, and she finds out that her boyfriend's roommate is survivor of this. And I thought that added a cool angle. It was kind of interesting to see like the world reacting to Art.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting tidbit that heightened the stakes for sure. That definitely like made it hit the characters harder, made it hit Sienna harder, made it hit Jonathan harder.
Yeah.
So I feel like that definitely served the story really nicely. Also, well, I was going to go back to your point about Damien Leone talking about the first scene where Art the Clown kills everybody in the family and he kills the kids, and we see the kid amputated and hacked. He
Yeah.
actually was interviewed talking about how somebody was saying that they didn't want to see it because they had kids and they felt like it was kind of insensitive or they couldn't handle it because they had kids and kids got killed. And Damien's like, yeah, this is a subject that we understand it's sensitive for people, but we also feel like there's no subject that's out of play.
Hmm.
So he said he wanted to have a scene where scenes where like kids were killed and impacted, but his way was not showing them actually being killed or stabbed on camera, like showing
Right.
them in the aftermath. He said that was his way of kind of making a compromise with it, is not showing them while they're actually being murdered, because we see all the adults actually being actively killed or amputated or desecrated somehow, but the kids are never shown on camera actually having it done to them. We only see it beforehand or we only see it afterwards.
That's true. They never get like an extensive torture death scene. The kids, it's pretty quick. But it reminds me of like this isn't the first time that we've had kids killed in movies. I mean, Halloween 2018, they did it with that kid in the car who's missing
Yeah,
dance class. And have you ever seen Doctor Sleep, the Shining sequel?
I've wanted to, but I never got to see it though.
It's fantastic, but there's a kid that gets killed in that movie, and that I think honestly, in a weird way, is more intense than the kid's getting killed in this. It's just more you hear him screaming and screaming, and he's just getting like murdered. And that, in a weird way, was more scary than this, but still. You and I don't have kids. It's hard for us to like speak to that. To me, it's like, okay, well, it's like anything, a dog gets killed, that's sad, but it's not your dog. It's a movie, but at the same point, I don't have kids, so I can't, I'm not going to speak to that. But it is intense.
Yeah,
And that's the thing, like this movie really pushes the limits. It like defines what the line is in a way?
agreed, totally agreed. And it gets away with it too. Like it pulls it off.
Yeah, because yeah, like if it went farther, like let's say they did like one of these adult death scenes with a kid, they might lose their hardcore fan base. So I think he even knows like there's just some things it's just distasteful, maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
I think, like you said, they're testing the line. And I think he knew where the line was in moments like that. And even with Vicky and the piece of glass in that scene in the house, I think that was another scene where he was kind of testing the line, like seeing how
Mm.
far he could go. And I think that scene in my mind was kind of him pushing the envelope or kind of testing the boundary of how far he could go as far with like combining sex and violence.
Dude, well, I mean, if you think about it, The Exorcist did it in 73, with a crucifix. So there is that.
Yeah, but I think the glass though, where it at you could tell you could actively as the audience feel the skin crawl where we could feel the pain
Yeah.
because we're just thinking to ourselves, how on earth can she be enjoying that? Or like what type of, like how the hell could that feel good? I mean, I'm trying to compare a cross with a shard of glass, but like at least with a cross, there's like some smoothness. So you're not necessarily actively cutting yourself.
Yeah, I think in The Exorcist she's doing it to be like as offensive as possible. I think that's the point. But the glass, I think it's just like, who's that for? Because at least in The Exorcist, it's like she's doing it in front of priests to be like, look what like how fucked up I am. But this woman's just doing it in front of art, so it's like, oh, okay, like she's really crazy.
Well, I mean, I'm wondering if it's related to when she looks at herself in the bathroom mirror before she goes into her coma in the bathtub, saying, like, oh, nobody will fuck me or nobody will want to fuck me.
That could be, yeah,
It might just be her way of dealing with that, perhaps.
yeah.
That might be an explanation. But otherwise, I just thought, from directorial or from the film standpoint, I think, like you said, Damien probably just tried to do certain things in this just to see what he could get away with.
No, I agree. I agree. So we've covered most of the major deaths up until I guess like the school now. So Sienna is hanging out with her sister or her cousin, and the parents are kind of like, I hope she's okay. Like she just got out of this asylum, and she's survived a horrible incident. So she goes to the mall with her cousin, her little cousin Gabby, and this scene is also very fucked up because Art is now dressed like Santa Claus. He's killed all the Santa, stolen his outfit, goes to the mall, sees Sienna, and then kills a bunch of kids there too. This is with a bomb. So it's like it just goes off. We don't see anything really, but it just, it's a kid opens a present and a bomb blows up and a bunch of kids die at the mall. And it's like, fuck, that is like, again, like just really pushing the limit. So at this point, Sienna and Jonathan are talking about Art. They're like, Art is there. He's the one who did the mall thing. We gotta kill this guy. And Jonathan's like, I'm trying to get on with my life. And this podcast girl's like, I want to interview your sister. And Sienna's like, I don't want to do this. Like, you're horrible to me or whatever. But this is the one scene that I'm sad that we didn't get to see because Sienna and Jonathan are talking about like, I'm gonna go get the sword that I cut his head off with because I think that's the powerful thing. They don't show that scene. They just show her coming back with like dirt on her hands or whatever. And I hated that. I kind of wish we could see revisit that place and maybe she could like hear the clown music again from the last place or see the water thing where she killed or she drowned herself in the second one. I was kind of disappointed we didn't get to see that scene. You know what I'm talking about? Where she goes back to the Terrifier?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe they had enough people who they knew were going to be people who had already seen it, or maybe they
Yeah.
knew that was going to be their primary audience was people who had seen everything in the previous movie. So we're like, all right, let's just get this show on the road. We don't have to waste too much time.
Yeah.
But like you said, I do wish that they kind of fleshed out Sienna as the battle angel a little bit more. I do like we saw her fighting the sword and we saw her with like the crown on her head and we kind of saw drawings of her, but I did want to see her kind of fleshed out with her powers a little bit more. But I guess also that goes to trying to work with how much of a budget they might have had. So
Mm.
maybe they're focusing on the gore and obviously not being able to do other things or lean into too many other visual points just to work within their budget. That, or maybe just to not ruin the aesthetic of all the blood or kind of counteracts the tactility of the blood. I think maybe if he thought he had too many VFX there, that it might throw everything off or look disjointed. But I mean, the battle was still very, very fun to watch. Like the sword fight between the chainsaw and the sword, that was definitely a fun fight.
Oh yeah.
And then at the end, where Sienna is trying to pull Gabby up with the sword and puts the handle down and she's grabbing the blade.
Yeah.
Again, I was like curling my seat. I'm like, oh my God, how can she hold that sword like that?
Mm.
And she already had her hands messed up already with the hammer. and with like the chainsaw, and yet she's still holding it like with her hands messed up. And obviously we know later on that her hands can heal and that she can heal, but still at that moment I'm just thinking, how is she not already messing up her hands?
I think I know. I think I know. So one scene that we haven't covered yet is there's flashbacks of Sienna when she's a kid talking to her dad.
Yeah,
And the dad's mentioned in the first one, in the second one, he's like a comic book artist or whatever, and we meet him in this one. And really quick, I'll explain why I think that. But do you know who that actor is?
I don't.
Dude, it's crazy. So you've seen The Lost Boys, right?
Yes.
He's Michael. He's the curly. He's like the lead in The Lost Boys.
Oh,
Yeah. And dude, his
oh,
dad is Father Merrin from The Exorcist. Or not Father Merrin, the other one, the young one, the young priest.
oh, okay. Wow, that's crazy.
And then it gets even better. His grandfather is Jackie Gleason.
Oh my God.
I was like, because I looked at his Wikipedia and it's just like he's related to so many people, and I was like, holy shit! Like, yeah, so pretty interesting family, like from The Exorcist to Lost Boys to Jackie Gleason to this. But yeah, so that's the dad.
That's bizarre. Yeah, I do remember those scenes, the flashback scenes where he creates a hero for her, and I know she ultimately becomes that hero by building the cosplay pieces in the second one.
And he says in this one though, he's like, and the sword that she holds can never hurt her. So when she's holding the sword with the blade, that's why I think her hand is able to heal.
Oh,
Yeah, because the sword is the sword that her father drew. So I think that's it. Or it's like she's supposed to be Jesus and this is like stigmata. Like I don't know. Because there was a lot of Christ references with like the guy being crucified and then the crown of thorns and the angels and demons. It was just a lot of that, I felt like.
yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
I've seen it in theaters. I also have watched it at home afterwards because I was like, this is one where I did want to watch it a second time to get more details about the backstory. Because, like, there were moments where I did want to pause it, like when Art shows his ID and shows his name is Maurice,
Mm,
or just when they're showing shots of Sienna's diary and how what she's writing in her diary. And in
right.
the theater, I was like, well, I was trying to read it, but they cut away from it too soon before I could actually read the handwriting.
Right.
So I was able to pause it at home, and I'm like, oh, his name's Maurice, or oh, she's talking about demonology in her journals,
Mm,
or it's in his journals. No, it's in his letters that he shows her that he's talking about demonology. So there were moments where I was like, okay, I want to actually read what he writes on the letters.
right. Yeah. I love doing that too, dude. I love pausing stuff and being like, what does that actually say? What does that news clipping say? It's fucking Yeah, I do the same thing. Yeah, so really quick, and we'll get to the ending in a second. We'll cover all that, but there is one pretty intense scene. A lot of people say this is the most intense scene in the movie. The podcast girl and her boyfriend are taking a shower,
Oh yeah.
and Jonathan's sleeping in his bed in the dorm. His uncle's coming to get him, and Art is coming to kill Jonathan. But then he hears this girl being like, "Yeah, I just want to meet Art the clown and just like what it's like to look at that evil and blah blah blah." And then they're having sex in the shower, and Art comes in with a chainsaw and just does horrible things to them. I mean, unspeakable things. But yeah, he kills both of them in horrifically brutal ways. I mean, the boy gets split in half from his balls to his head with a
His junk. Yeah.
yeah, with a chainsaw. And then Art does the snow angel in blood. And that's the thing that I think was in the trailer and people are like, "Oh my God." So, a lot of people think that's the most intense kill of the movie and it's up there. It's up there. But I don't know, man. I think the one we're about to get to is the most intense.
I mean, that scene definitely made me cringe, but also cracked me up a little bit because, like, there's the scene where he chops the guy in half, and I was looking at the body when he chops him in half, and I'm like, wait a minute, did he chop him through his ass cheeks, or was he on his front back and it was like through his balls? So at first, when I watched it, I laughed because I thought the chainsaw was going through his ass cheeks.
Yeah.
So I kind of cringed, but also laughed at the same time because I'm just like, that's just mean going through his ass cheeks.
So fucked up.
It is. And then also him putting the sunglasses on the girl after he like hacks away at her face and like dismembers her. And is like kind of being mean after he heard all the things that she said about him when she's like, sitting up on her boyfriend saying like, I want to feel him. I want to smell him, I want to feel what it's like be around him. And Art is sort of like, really leaning into that.
Hmm.
So that was one scene where I cringed, but I also laughed a little bit.
The song.
The song and yeah, exactly. The choir music.
Well, dude, it's like an original song. It's like it's a Terrifier Christmas, and it was like a whole thing about Art the Clown. Like it was a Christmas Art the Clown song. Like right when that happened, I was like, okay, this is the comedic relief. But up until that point, I was like, God damn.
Like I said, I cringed and laughed and had morbid curiosity simultaneously throughout this whole movie.
And it invokes a lot of emotions. And the final scene invoked the most emotions for me, just because, like, it was very violent. So basically, what happens is Sienna has a flashback to her dad. She's sleeping. She comes downstairs to find Art and Vicky, and they're standing in the her living room. Her uncle's head is the star on the Christmas tree. Her aunt is tied up, and they have a head in a bag on the counter, and they say, "This is your daughter's head." They tie up Sienna, and then they just torture the mother horrifically and say
Oh
the
yeah.
worst things, and yeah, they say, "This is Gabby, this is your daughter's head," and then they kill the mom by shoving a rod down her throat and putting rats into the rod and lighting the rod on fire so the rats crawl through her, and it's just like, I don't know. I don't know. I just, I really didn't feel good watching this scene. Like, she's like, "There's no God. Your daughter's dead." Like, I'm just like, what the fuck, man? It's so messed up.
It was. And I think putting the icing on the cake with that was then, cutting her throat open after putting the rats in the tube and then letting the rats come back out after cutting her throat open,
Yeah.
sort of having the rats kind of go through a whole like little obstacle course. Again, like you said, evoked so many emotions. For me, I was like, oh, well, at least the rats got out of there. At least the rats weren't stuck inside.
Well, at least there's that, I guess, but it's the cruelty of it. It wasn't just the violence, but it was just like the cruel nature of it too. I think that's what got me. But then we find out that it's not Gabby, it's Jonathan. So it's actually the brother, they say. They like put glasses on him. I was like, oh my God. And yeah, so they say he's dead, and then they take Gabby out. They're like, "This is your cousin. We're gonna kill her too." And here's the thing: imagine being this actress, this little girl actress, dude. Like, this is a pretty fucked up scene to be a part of, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's no kids really in the other ones, like to this degree. I felt, well, I guess the other kid was pretty young in the first one, but I don't know. This girl felt like real young, and I was like, this is really disturbing. Yeah, so then it's kind of a funny scene. I will say I laughed a little bit when they're like, "We're gonna kill her right now." And it's like, "Do you want to open your last present or whatever?" She's like, "She didn't get to open mine." And Vicky just goes like, "Well, that's not fair." And I thought that was kind of funny. So stupid, and is the reason they lose. But still, it was a little funny.
I mean, they had to find a way to get Sienna to be able to come back and fight Art and fight off Vicky. So they had to find something, and I think it wasn't a bad way because, of course, it would make sense that Gabby knew what was in the present because they explained earlier that Gabby's always figuring out where all the gifts are hidden. Like she's always looking under the floorboards and always unwrapping everything and putting it back before anyone knows that she finds it, or the fact that she's going through Sienna's diary. And even though Sienna's like being emphatic saying, no, don't read my diary. So it
Hmm.
would make sense that Gabby knows that that gift is the sword.
My favorite part of that little monologue is when she says, I unwrap and rewrapped presents. And then when Vicky's just like, "Did you wrap this yourself?" And she goes, "Yeah." She's like, "Shitty job." So it was like, "Ooh." So no, so it showed that, yeah, she did open it. So like, I thought that was a nice little drop. That was a good way to do that.
Yeah. So I, like you said, I laughed at it too. And it was pretty crazy and very bloody. And the amount of blood, just everybody's caked in blood at that point.
Hmm.
And I just was like sitting there, seeing first of all, the fact that everybody's caked in blood, the fact that Sienna's fighting Art with like not only her face in blood, but with the thorns on top of her face, the crown of thorns
Yeah, yeah.
on her face, the fact that she's doing all of that, and watching her fight while Art is also like covered in blood simultaneously. It's one of those fights or the depictions where they didn't have to do a heavy amount of like sword choreography or fancy sword choreography. I think it was just already just the way the fight was set up was already, I think, pretty messed up or pretty engaging.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the whole room, the way she gets out of being strangled by her uncle's intestinal cord by literally just saying
Ugh.
screw it and just biting through his intestinal cord to get away. And then Art's reaction just being so frustrated and disappointing, saying, like, oh, come on. And
Yeah.
he was just like, and then he just whips her with the intestinal cord. I laughed at that.
It got goofy, but it was fun. And yeah, Vicky then gets her head cut off by the sword and it like melts into like black goo and then a portal to hell opens, Gabby falls down, Art gets stabbed and then like runs away, which is kind of lame, but yeah, so now she loses Gabby to the hell portal and she's just like, I'm gonna get you back, I swear. Art's on a bus, so it's just kind of a little lame that he just ran away to a bus, but you're like, okay. He gets on, and it's interesting though. This woman on the bus is reading this book called The Ninth Circle, which is like, the Ninth Circle to Hell, Dante's Inferno, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
apparently that's the first short that Art the Clown was in, was called The Ninth Circle. So it's,
Oh,
yeah, so it's like, okay, they went to hell in this movie. Art's from his first movie is called The Ninth, or yeah, I think The Ninth. Oh my God, what is it?
nine circles of hell
Nine
or something.
circles. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know what it is. Ninth layer? I don't know. But anyways, so yeah, nice little kind of big nod to everything. And yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely gonna see the fourth one. Not in theaters, but I will see the fourth one.
For me, I'm gonna want to see it in theaters just because I'm just personally gonna be like, what happens? What happens? How do they wrap this up? Because
Yeah.
Damien did make a point to say that the fourth one was gonna be the last one.
I don't believe that for 1 second. You shouldn't either, dude. Every Friday the 13th, the final chapter, Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy's dead. Like, come on. It never ends. If these make money, they're coming back.
What? So you think that somehow some ambulance member is gonna be possessed by demons, and then an ambulance member becomes the new Art? Like in Friday the 13th, where all of a sudden this EMT named Roy says, my son was killed thanks to you, and now I'm going to be the new Jason.
Yeah. They always have something. With possession, this is not going to end. The fourth one will make more money than this one. They're not going to end. I promise you the fourth one will not be the last one.
Well, to be fair, Art is already a demon and undead, I suppose. He's
Yeah.
already back from the dead, and Jason had to come back from the dead in order for them to keep it going. So they may have to dig deeper to find ways to keep him going if they do that.
Mark my words, Andy. Mark my word. There will be a Terrifier 5. Mark my words. They don't end movies unless they don't make money. I promise you.
Vicky's Revenge.
Yeah, there'll be a spin-off series on HBO Max. Like there'll be something, like it's not gonna end.
That would actually be kind of cool. An H-Max series or a spin-off series of some sort. I'd be okay with that, actually.
There will be.
Maybe it's a Shutter or something.
Yeah, it'll probably be on Shudder. Like honestly.
I'd watch that.
I mean, me too. Or Screambox or something. But well, Andy, you got any last minute thoughts on Terrifier 3?
I will just say I enjoyed it a lot more than I anticipated. I've enjoyed Terrifier movies overall a lot more than I initially expected. It is one of those movies I think for me is quintessentially find my own morbid curiosity. When it comes to like seeing something awful but can't look away from something, that would be the Terrifier movies for me, just
Yeah.
because of the ways they've been made and executed.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I'm impressed by them. They're kind of a movie that like I've only seen once or twice, and I think that's enough kind of thing. But I'm glad I've seen them. It raises the bar. Good movies. But Andy, thank you very much for coming on, man. Really appreciate your insight on Terrifier 3.
Thanks for having me. This was a fun one.
Yeah, dude. No, this was it's fun to talk about good horror movies, even though they're hard to get through, but it was an experience. Well, I'm gonna spin the wheel today for Eric, but yeah, let's spin the wheel. All right, we got a movie called Brain Scan. I've never heard of this actually. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't.
Yeah, I'm interested. Joe Testa suggested it, so he will be returning for that. But yeah, Andy, thank you very much again. Appreciate it, and we will see everybody next week with Brain Scan.
Woo!